3 days after my mother-in-law made my 8-year-old son cry in front of all his friends, I walked into her house while she was hosting her church group. 12 women sat in her living room, sipping coffee and talking about charity work. They all looked up when I came through the door. My mother-in-law's face went completely white when she saw what I was carrying. And I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. I would do it again. I would do it 100 times, because some people don't understand words. They only understand consequences. My name is Corinne. I'm 34 years old and I work as a pediatric occupational therapist. I spend my days helping children with developmental delays learn how to hold pencils, button their shirts, and navigate a world that wasn't built for them. I'm patient by nature. I was raised to be polite, to keep the peace, to smile through discomfort because making a scene was considered worse than suffering in silence. My Aunt Greta, the woman who raised me after my parents died when I was 12, used to tell me that my kindness was both my greatest strength and my greatest weakness. She said, "Corinne, one day you're going to have to decide whether you want to be nice or whether you want to be respected, because sometimes you can't be both." I didn't understand what she meant until I married into the Bellamy family. My husband's name is Declan. He's 36, a civil engineer who builds bridges for a living. He's a good man in a lot of ways. He coaches our son's little league team. He makes pancakes every Saturday morning. He tells me he loves me before he falls asleep every single night. But Declan has a blind spot, and that blind spot is his mother. Her name is Vivian Bellamy. She's 67 years old, a retired insurance claims adjuster who spent 30 years finding reasons to deny people the help they needed. I should have seen that as a warning sign. Vivian is the kind of woman who walks into a room and expects everyone to rearrange themselves around her comfort. She's the matriarch of the Bellamy family, and she rules it through guilt, manipulation, and the silent threat of disapproval. Her children, Declan and his older sister Lorene, have spent their entire lives trying to earn her approval. They've never fully succeeded. No one ever does with Vivian. That's how she keeps control. From the moment Declan introduced me to his mother, she made one thing clear. I was not good enough for her son. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My father worked at a hardware store. My mother was a school secretary. They died in a car accident when I was 12, and my Aunt Greta took me in and raised me with love, but not with money. To Vivian, I was a nobody from nowhere, and her son had made a terrible mistake by choosing me. On our second date, Vivian called Declan's phone. I answered because he was in the bathroom. When she heard my voice, she hung up without saying a single word. At our wedding, she wore a cream-colored dress that was close enough to white to make a statement. She told guests within earshot of me, "I just hope he doesn't regret this in 5 years." I heard her. I smiled and said nothing because I wanted to start my marriage on peaceful terms. Then came my son, my beautiful, sensitive, imaginative boy. His name is Theo, and at the time of this story, he was about to turn 8 years old. Theo is the kind of child who notices everything. He notices when someone is sad. He notices when a friend is left out at recess. He notices when his grandmother hugs his cousins, but only pats him on the head. He has known since he was 5 that Vivian treats him differently than she treats Lorene's 2 children. He just never understood why. The day Theo was born, Vivian came to the hospital to meet her grandson. She looked at him in my arms, this perfect tiny human I had just brought into the world, and she said, "He has your nose. That's unfortunate." I laughed it off because I was exhausted and overwhelmed and didn't have the energy to fight. Declan squeezed my hand and whispered, "That's just how she is. That's just how she is." I heard that phrase so many times over the next 8 years that it started to feel like a prison sentence. That's just how she is when she gave my niece and nephew elaborate birthday gifts and handed Theo a used book with a torn cover. That's just how she is when she forgot to set a place for Theo at the kids' table during Thanksgiving. That's just how she is when she told Declan that Theo was too soft and not athletic like the other grandchildren, and that we had coddled him into weakness. I kept the peace for 8 years. I bit my tongue. I made excuses. I told myself that Theo needed a grandmother, even an imperfect one, and that family was worth fighting for. I told myself that Vivian would come around eventually, that if I was just patient enough, kind enough, accommodating enough, she would finally accept us. I was wrong. 3 days before Theo's 8th birthday party, Declan told me his mother wanted to bring a cake. I had already ordered one from a local bakery, a T-Rex cake, because Theo was obsessed with dinosaurs and dreamed of becoming a paleontologist. But Declan said his mother insisted. He asked me to let her contribute so she would feel included. I should have said no. I should have trusted the knot in my stomach that tightened every time Vivian's name came up. But I said yes, because I was still trying to keep the peace. I told Declan that the cake needed to say, "Happy birthday, Theo," and nothing else. He promised he would tell her. He promised. What happened next broke something inside my son that I am still trying to repair. And what I did in response changed everything. This is that story. The week before Theo's 8th birthday was one of the happiest I had seen him in a long time. He woke up every morning asking how many days were left. He helped me hang streamers in the backyard. He made a handwritten guest list with 12 names, each one written in a different colored marker because he wanted every friend to feel special. Theo had always struggled socially. He was quieter than the other boys, more interested in reading about fossils than playing rough on the playground. Making friends didn't come easily to him, and birthday parties had always been small affairs with just a few kids from the neighborhood. But this year was different. This year, Theo had finally found his group, a handful of boys from his 2nd grade class who loved dinosaurs as much as he did. They traded facts at lunch. They drew pictures of velociraptors during free time. For the first time in his young life, my son felt like he belonged somewhere. He wanted to celebrate that, and I wanted to give him the perfect day. I spent 2 weeks planning every detail. I ordered dinosaur plates, cups, and napkins. I bought a piñata shaped like a triceratops. I set up a fossil dig in the sandbox where the kids could uncover plastic bones buried in the dirt. I hung a banner across the back fence that said, "Happy 8th birthday, Theo," in bright green letters. I did all of this myself because I wanted it to be exactly right. I wanted my son to feel loved and celebrated and seen. Declan helped where he could, but he was working long hours on a bridge project 2 towns over. Most evenings, he came home exhausted, ate dinner, and fell asleep on the couch. I didn't resent him for it. That was just our life during busy seasons. But it meant that when his mother called and asked to contribute to the party, Declan was the one who said yes without consulting me first. He told me about it on a Tuesday night, 4 days before the party. I was frosting cupcakes at the kitchen counter when he walked in and said, "My mom wants to bring a cake." I set down the spatula. I already ordered a cake, the T-Rex one from Henderson's Bakery. Theo picked it out himself. Declan shrugged. She knows, but she wants to bring one too. She said it would make her feel like part of the celebration. Something in my chest tightened. Vivian had never once made an effort to be part of Theo's celebrations. Last year, she showed up an hour late and left before we sang Happy Birthday. The year before that, she forgot his birthday entirely and mailed a card 2 weeks later with a $5 bill inside. No note, no apology, just a wrinkled bill and a generic card that said, "Happy birthday, grandson," in printed text. "Declan, I don't think that's a good idea." He walked over and kissed my forehead. "Come on, Corinne, she's trying. Let her try." I wanted to argue. I wanted to list every instance where Vivian had let Theo down, every cruel comment, every dismissive glance. But Declan had that look on his face, the one that said he was tired and didn't want to fight about his mother again. We had fought about her so many times over the years, about the way she treated Theo, about the way she treated me, about the fact that he never stood up to her, never set boundaries, never chose us over her feelings. Every fight ended the same way. Declan would promise to talk to her. Vivian would behave slightly better for a few weeks. Then everything would go back to normal. I was exhausted too, so I gave in. "Fine," I said, "but the cake needs to say, 'Happy birthday, Theo.' Nothing else. No commentary, no backhanded messages. Just a normal birthday cake." Declan nodded. "I'll tell her. It'll be fine." "It'll be fine." Those 3 words echoed in my head for the rest of the week. I repeated them to myself while I inflated balloons. I repeated them while I wrapped presents. I repeated them on Saturday morning when I woke up before dawn to set up the backyard for the party. It'll be fine. She'll behave. Just this once, she'll put Theo first. The morning of the party, Theo came downstairs in his favorite dinosaur t-shirt. It was green with a cartoon T-Rex on the front and the words, "Roar means I love you," printed underneath. He had picked it out himself at the mall 3 weeks earlier. He told me he wanted to wear it so his friends would know he was serious about dinosaurs. I knelt down and straightened his collar and told him this was going to be the best birthday ever. He smiled at me with his whole face, the way only children can smile, and said, "I know, Mom, because you planned it." 12 children arrived between noon and 12:30, the backyard filled with laughter and shrieking and the sound of sneakers pounding across grass. Theo ran from friend to friend, showing off the fossil dig, explaining which dinosaur each plastic bone belonged to. His cheeks were flushed with excitement. His eyes were bright. I stood by the snack table and watched him, and I felt something loosen in my chest. This was what he deserved. This was what I had wanted for him, ever since the day he was born. A moment where he felt completely, perfectly happy. Vivian arrived at 1:15. She was 45 minutes late. She walked through the side gate carrying a large rectangular cake box, and she was smiling. Not a warm smile. Not a grandmother at a birthday party smile. It was the kind of smile I had seen on her face before, usually right before she said something cutting and pretended it was a joke. I should have stopped her right there. I should have taken the box from her hands and checked what was inside, but I didn't. Because even after 8 years, some part of me still believed she might surprise me. She never did. Vivian walked past me without saying hello. She didn't acknowledge the decorations, or the children, or the effort I had put into making this day special. She walked straight to the dessert table where the T-Rex cake from Henderson's Bakery sat waiting for the candles to be lit. She set her cake box down next to it and turned to face the backyard full of children. "Everyone gather around," she called out, in a voice that carried across the yard. "I brought a special cake for the birthday boy." The children stopped what they were doing. Parents looked up from their conversations. Theo came running from the sandbox, his hands still covered in dirt, his face lit up with curiosity. I watched from across the yard as Vivian lifted the lid of the cake box with a flourish, like she was presenting a gift. The cake inside was white with pale blue frosting. It was simple and elegant, the kind of cake you might see at a baby shower or a retirement party. But it was the writing that made my blood turn cold. In neat cursive letters across the top, the cake read, "Sorry you exist." For a moment, nobody moved. The yard went completely silent. I could hear birds chirping in the neighbor's tree. I could hear the faint sound of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. But in our backyard, there was nothing. Just 12 children staring at a cake they didn't understand, and a grandmother smiling like she had just given the greatest gift in the world. Theo stepped closer to the table. He was still smiling, still expecting something wonderful because, why wouldn't he? It was his birthday. His grandmother had brought him a cake. He moved his lips as he sounded out the words, the way he did when he was reading something new. I watched his expression change in real time. The smile faded, his eyebrows pulled together. His lower lip began to tremble. Vivian spoke before anyone else could react. "I believe honesty is important," she said loudly, making sure every parent in that backyard could hear her. Someone had to say what we're all thinking. Theo looked up at her. Then he looked at me. His eyes were wet, and his face had crumpled into something I had never seen before. It was confusion and hurt and shame all twisted together. He didn't say a word. He just turned and ran into the house. I heard the back door slam. I heard his footsteps pounding up the stairs. I heard his bedroom door close with a force that shook the hallway. The silence in the backyard lasted another 3 seconds. Then everything happened at once. Parents started gathering their children. I heard murmurs and whispers and the shuffling of feet. One mother, a woman named Deborah, whose son was in Theo's class, walked past me with her hand on her boy's shoulder. She leaned close and whispered, "I am so sorry, Corinne." Then she was gone. I stood frozen in the middle of my own backyard watching the party I had spent 2 weeks planning fall apart in less than a minute. Declan was standing by the grill with his mouth hanging open. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. He said nothing. Vivian remained at the dessert table. She picked up a carrot stick from the vegetable tray and bit into it like nothing had happened. When she noticed me staring at her, she raised an eyebrow. "What? The boy needs toughening up. You've coddled him into weakness. I did you a favor." My hands were shaking. My voice came out uneven when I finally spoke. "Why would you do this? Why would you say that to a child? To your own grandson?" Vivian sighed like I was being dramatic. "He's too sensitive, Corinne. That's your fault. If you had raised him properly, a little joke wouldn't send him running to his room." A joke. She called it a joke. I looked at the cake sitting on the table, those 3 words staring back at me in blue frosting, and I felt something crack inside my chest. This was not a joke. This was cruelty designed and delivered with precision. She had planned this. She had ordered this cake, driven to my home, and presented it to a child in front of everyone he wanted to impress. This was not an accident. This was punishment. By 1:45, every guest had left. The backyard was empty. Streamers hung limp from the fence. The piñata swung gently in the breeze, untouched. Plates of uneaten food sat on tables, surrounded by empty chairs. I walked through the house and up the stairs to Theo's room. I knocked on his door and called his name, but he didn't answer. I tried the handle, but he had locked it from inside. "Theo, sweetheart, please open the door." His voice came through small and broken. "I don't want to talk, Mom. Please just go away." I pressed my forehead against his door and closed my eyes. I could hear him crying on the other side. My 8-year-old son, on his birthday, sobbing alone in his room because his grandmother told him the world would be better if he didn't exist. I stood there for 10 minutes, listening to him cry, and I felt something shift in my chest. The part of me that had spent 8 years keeping the peace, making excuses and hoping for change, went quiet. Something harder took its place. Theo didn't come out of his room that night. He didn't come out the next day either. For 2 full days, my son stayed in his bedroom with the door locked. He only came out to use the bathroom. He refused to eat at the table. When I brought him food, he asked me to leave it outside his door. He didn't want to see anyone. He didn't want to talk about what happened. He just wanted to disappear. And the woman who did this to him never apologized. She never even acknowledged that she had done anything wrong. On the second night after the party, I sat in my living room at 2 a.m. while the rest of the house slept. The television was off. The lights were dim. I held my phone in my hands and scrolled through photos from the party, the ones I had taken before everything fell apart. Theo smiling with his friends, Theo showing off the fossil dig, Theo laughing with his whole body, completely unaware of what was coming. I stared at those photos until my eyes burned, and I made a decision. I was done protecting Vivian Bellamy. The next morning, I called Aunt Greta. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp and alert even though it was barely 7 o'clock. "I've been waiting for this call," she said. "Tell me everything." I told her. I told her about the cake and the words written on it. I told her about Vivian's speech about honesty. I told her about Theo running to his room and not coming out for 2 days. I told her about Declan calling his mother that night and describing her behavior as a little much. I told her about standing outside my son's locked door, listening to him cry and feeling completely powerless. When I finished, Aunt Greta was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What are you going to do about it?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not going to let this go. I can't." "Good," she said, "because that woman has been getting away with cruelty for too long. She does it because no one has ever made her face consequences. People like Vivian don't change because you ask them nicely. They change when their reputation is on the line, when the people they're trying to impress see who they really are." That conversation stayed with me all day. I thought about what Aunt Greta said about reputation. Vivian cared deeply about how others perceived her. She volunteered at church fundraisers. She organized neighborhood events. She presented herself as a devoted grandmother and a pillar of the community. The women in her church group adored her because they only saw the version of Vivian she wanted them to see. They had no idea what she was like behind closed doors. They had no idea what she had done to my son. That afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I reached out to Lorene, Declan's older sister. Lorene and I had never been close. She kept her distance from family drama and stayed firmly in her mother's good graces. But I also knew that Lorene had witnessed things over the years. Comments Vivian made about her own children, criticism disguised as concern, favoritism that shifted like sand depending on who was pleasing her at the moment. I sent Lorene a text message that was direct and honest. I have videos of Theo crying for 2 days because of what your mother did. I have texts from parents who witnessed the party. I'm going to make sure everyone in her life knows who Vivian really is. You can either stand with me or stay out of my way. I didn't expect a response. Lorene had spent her entire life avoiding conflict with her mother, but an hour later my phone buzzed with a reply. I've wanted to say something for years. She's done things to my kids, too. Not as public, but just as cruel. What do you need from me? I asked Lorene for stories. Every cruel comment Vivian had made to the grandchildren. Every manipulative tactic she used to control the family. Every time she made someone feel small and unworthy. Lorene sent me a list that night. It filled 2 pages. Reading it made me sick to my stomach, but it also made me certain that I was doing the right thing. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I typed everything into a single document. I included dates and details and direct quotes. I titled it, The Truth About Vivian Bellamy, A Grandmother's Legacy. When I finished, I printed 12 copies, one for each woman in Vivian's Thursday church group. Declan noticed something was different about me. I was calm in a way that made him nervous. I wasn't crying or yelling or asking him to intervene with his mother. I was quiet and focused and deliberate. On Wednesday night, he found me in the kitchen staring out the window at nothing in particular. Corinne, what's going on with you? You've been acting strange all week. I turned to face him. I'm going to your mother's house tomorrow morning. His face went pale. What are you planning? I'm going to do what you never had the courage to do. I'm going to hold her accountable. Declan stepped closer and lowered his voice like he was afraid someone might hear. Corinne, please don't make a scene. She's still my mother. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I had loved for 10 years. This man who had watched his mother torment his wife and son and never once stood in her way. I loved him, but I was also furious with him, and I was done waiting for him to protect us. And Theo is still your son, I said. But only one of us seems to remember that. I walked past him and went to bed. I didn't sleep much that night, but when the sun came up on Thursday morning, I was ready. I got dressed. I picked up the stack of printed documents. I grabbed the cake box I had picked up from the bakery the day before, and I drove to Vivian's house to finally give her what she deserved. Vivian's house was a 2-story colonial on a quiet street lined with oak trees. It looked exactly like what it was meant to represent: respectability, tradition, the home of a woman who had done everything right. 12 cars were parked along the curb and in the driveway. The Thursday morning church group was in full swing. I could hear muffled laughter through the windows as I walked up the front path, carrying my cake box in one hand and a folder of documents tucked under my arm. I didn't knock. I walked straight through the front door like I belonged there. The living room fell silent the moment I stepped inside. 12 women sat in a circle, coffee cups in hand, plates of pastries balanced on their laps. They stared at me with confusion and curiosity. Some of them I recognized from neighborhood events and holiday gatherings. Others were strangers. But they all had one thing in common. They believed Vivian Bellamy was a good woman, a devoted mother, a loving grandmother. They were about to learn the truth. Vivian sat in her favorite armchair near the fireplace. She was wearing a cream-colored cardigan and pearl earrings, looking every bit the gracious hostess. When she saw me, her expression shifted from surprise to annoyance. She set down her coffee cup and straightened her spine. Corinne, this is a private meeting. Whatever drama you're here to create can wait until later. I walked into the center of the room. My heart was pounding so hard. I could feel it in my throat, but my hands were steady. I had practiced this moment in my head 100 times over the past 3 days. I knew exactly what I was going to say and exactly what I was going to do. Actually, it can't wait, I said. I'm here to return something that belongs to you. I set the cake box down on the coffee table in front of her. Every woman in the room leaned forward slightly, curious about what was inside. I lifted the lid slowly and turned the box so everyone could see. The cake was white with pale blue frosting, just like the one Vivian had brought to my son's party. But this time, the words written in neat cursive said something different. Sorry you exist, Vivian. The room gasped. One woman brought her hand to her mouth. Another whispered something under her breath. Vivian's face drained of color. For the first time since I had known her, she looked genuinely rattled. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, but her voice had lost its usual authority. I reached into the folder and began handing out the printed documents to each woman in the room. Some of them took the papers hesitantly. Others grabbed them with open curiosity. I watched their faces as they began to read. "This is a summary of how Vivian has treated her grandchildren for the past decade," I said. "It includes direct quotes from her, documented incidents, and statements from her own daughter confirming the pattern of behavior." One woman near the window looked up from the document with wide eyes. "You told your 8-year-old grandson that you wished he had never been born?" Vivian sputtered. "That is completely out of context. Corinne has always been dramatic and oversensitive. She's twisting my words to make me look bad." I pulled out my phone. "Then let me provide some context." I pressed play on a video that Lorene had sent me 2 days earlier. It was from Christmas 2 years ago, filmed on Lorene's phone during what was supposed to be a family dinner. In the video, Vivian's voice rang out clear and sharp as she looked directly at Theo and said, "You're the reason your parents never had more children. They couldn't risk another one like you." The room went completely silent. The video ended, and I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I looked around at the faces of these women who had gathered in Vivian's home week after week, believing they knew who she was. Some of them looked horrified. Others looked sick. One woman in the corner had tears streaming down her cheeks. A woman I recognized as Vivian's oldest friend stood up from her chair. Her name was Dorothy, and she had known Vivian for over 30 years. She looked at Vivian with an expression I can only describe as betrayal. "Vivian," Dorothy said quietly, "please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me you didn't say these things to a child." Vivian opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For once in her life, she had no excuse ready, no clever deflection, no way to spin her cruelty into something acceptable. I turned to face her directly. I had waited 8 years for this moment, 8 years of swallowed anger and bitten tongues and sleepless nights spent wondering if I was overreacting. I wasn't overreacting. I had never been overreacting, and now everyone in this room knew it. "You wanted to teach my son that honesty is important," I said. "So here's some honesty for you. You are no longer welcome in his life. Not at birthdays, not at holidays, not at school events, not ever. If you try to contact him, I will send this document to every person in your life, your neighbors, your extended family, the members of this church who think you're a saint. Everyone will know exactly who you are and what you've done." I picked up the cake box and placed it in her lap. "Keep the cake. Consider it a gift." I walked toward the front door without looking back. My legs felt like they might give out, but I kept moving. I heard Vivian call my name, her voice cracking in a way I had never heard before. She sounded small. She sounded afraid. For 8 years, I had been afraid of her. Now the tables had turned. I stepped outside into the morning sunlight and closed the door behind me. The fresh air hit my face and I realized I was shaking. But it wasn't from fear. It was from relief. It was finally over. I sat in my car outside Vivian's house for a full 5 minutes before I could bring myself to start the engine. My hands were trembling against the steering wheel. My heart was still racing. I had just done something I never thought I was capable of doing. I had stood up to the woman who had made my life miserable for 8 years, and I had done it in front of everyone who mattered to her. There was no taking it back. There was no apologizing or smoothing things over. The bridge was burned, and I was the one holding the match. I pulled out my phone and called Aunt Greta. She answered on the first ring like she had been sitting by the phone waiting. "Did you do it?" "I did it." "And how do you feel?" I leaned back in my seat and stared at Vivian's house through the windshield. The curtains in the living room were still. No one had come outside. No one had chased after me demanding an explanation or an apology. For the first time in 8 years, Vivian Bellamy had nothing to say. "I feel like I should have done this a long time ago." Aunt Greta laughed softly. "Better late than never, sweetheart. Now go home and take care of that boy." When I pulled into my driveway 20 minutes later, I sat in the car for another moment just breathing. The house looked the same as it always did, the same brick front, the same blue shutters, the same basketball hoop in the driveway that Theo had begged for last Christmas, but something felt different. I felt different. Lighter, somehow, like I had been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there until I finally set it down. I walked inside and found Theo sitting at the kitchen table. It was the first time he had left his room in 3 days. He was eating a bowl of cereal, his favorite kind with the little marshmallows, and he looked up when I came through the door. His eyes were still red from crying, and his hair was messy from days of lying in bed. But he was there. He was out of his room. That felt like a victory. "Mom, where did you go?" I set my keys on the counter and pulled out the chair next to him. I sat down and looked at my son, this beautiful, sensitive boy who had done nothing wrong except exist in a family that didn't deserve him. "I went to Grandma Vivian's house," I said. "I told her that what she did to you was wrong, and I told her that she's not allowed to treat you like that ever again." Theo stirred his cereal slowly, watching the marshmallows float in circles. "Is she going to say sorry?" I wanted to lie to him. I wanted to tell him that yes, Grandma would apologize and everything would go back to normal, but I had spent too many years protecting him from truths he needed to hear. He deserved honesty, even when it hurt. "I don't know, sweetheart. Some people never learn how to say sorry, but that doesn't mean you have to keep letting them hurt you, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. What she said on that cake was a lie. Do you understand me? It was a cruel, terrible lie told by a person who has something broken inside her. You are not a mistake. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Theo looked up at me with those big brown eyes that reminded me so much of his father. "Do you promise?" "I promise. Every single day for the rest of my life. I promise." He nodded slowly, and then he asked the question that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. "Mom, can we still have cake?" "Not that cake. A real one." That afternoon, Theo and I stood side by side in our kitchen and baked a chocolate cake from scratch. We made a mess of the counter with flour and cocoa powder. We argued about whether to use chocolate frosting or vanilla. We wrote "Happy Birthday, Theo" across the top in messy, uneven letters because neither of us had steady hands. When we finished, I put 8 candles on top and lit them one by one. Theo closed his eyes and made a wish, and when he blew out the candles, he was smiling. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen since before the party. That night, Declan came home looking exhausted. He told me his mother had called him 6 times. Half of her church group had stopped speaking to her. Dorothy, her oldest friend, had left her house without saying goodbye and hadn't returned her calls since. Vivian was devastated. She wanted Declan to fix it. She wanted him to make me apologize. Declan stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Are you happy now?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not happy. I'm relieved. There's a difference." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I had been waiting 8 years to hear. "I should have protected him. I should have protected both of you. I'm sorry, Corinne. I'm so sorry." It wasn't enough to fix everything. I knew that. The damage Vivian had done to our son would take time to heal. The damage Declan's silence had done to our marriage would take even longer, but it was a start. For the first time, he was choosing us over his mother's feelings. For the first time, he was admitting that he had been wrong. We started couples counseling the following week. Declan began seeing a therapist on his own to work through his relationship with his mother. It was hard. There were days when I wasn't sure we were going to make it, but we kept showing up. We kept trying, and slowly, things began to change. Theo is 9 years old now. He still loves dinosaurs. He still dreams of becoming a paleontologist. He has a small group of friends who accept him exactly as he is, and he no longer asks why his grandmother doesn't love him. He doesn't see Vivian anymore. She has tried to reach out a few times through Declan, but I have held firm on my boundary. She's not welcome in our lives. She lost that privilege the moment she put that cake in front of my son. Here's what I learned through all of this. Silence does not keep the peace. It just lets the cruelty grow. I spent 8 years protecting a woman who never deserved my protection, and the only person who suffered was my child. If someone in your life is hurting the people you love, do not wait for them to change. They will not change. Protect your family. Set the boundary. And if they call you dramatic or oversensitive or difficult, let them. Because the people who truly love you will not call you those things. They will call you brave. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You are not alone. And it is never too late to stand up for the people who matter most. Theo is happy now. He is safe. He is loved. And that is worth every burned bridge and every uncomfortable conversation and every moment of doubt I felt along the way. Some cakes are meant to be thrown away. Some people are too. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If it moved you or made you think or reminded you of someone in your own life, I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have confronted Vivian? Would you have handled it differently? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who might be going through something similar and feeling like they're all alone. Sometimes a story like this is exactly what someone needs to find their own courage. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. I post videos every week about real people facing real challenges and finding the strength to fight back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I'll see you in the next one.